Hey everyone, it's Jess. Today I wanted to do a care video on this amazing specimen, this amazing plant. This is known as an ALOCASIA Xanthosoma ATREVIERAS VARIEGATA Monstrosum. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's mostly known as a ALOCASIA Xanthosoma, or colloquially known as the Mickey Mouse plant. I'd wanted to do this care video for a long time, but I guess I never just got the chance to film it. And so when I saw him today, I was like, I've got to do a video with him because he's got these amazing leaves and I wanted to share him with everyone. This plant is a member of the AROID family, native to the tropical parts of America. So that's around the areas of Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Cuba. This plant lives in the understory of a lot of rainforest areas, and the understory refers to that area beneath the canopy but not exactly on the forest floor. This Xanthosoma is typically grown for its foliage, and you can definitely see why. I mean, look at the amazing foliage this plant throws off. It's got an amazing shape, it's got amazing texture, and the variegation is just phenomenal. It's crazy. This is definitely grown as an ornamental plant. However, it is edible. The edible bits of it is known as the culm, and that is found where the stalk just meets the tuber. Xanthosomas are part of the ALOCASIA and COLOCASIA family. A good way to distinguish between those three different families is to look at their leaves. So ALOCASIAs, they tend to have leaves that point upwards, and the reason for that is because its petiole, which is stem or stalk, this bit of the plant, it runs along the leaf blade, it's connected to the leaf blade, and it shoots right up, which means that the leaves of that plant tend to stick upwards. With COLOCASIAs, on the other hand, petiole is attached to the leaf itself, allowing the leaf to actually droop downwards. So the difference between ALOCASIAs and COLOCASIAs is leaves of an ALOCASIA point upwards, whereas leaves of a COLOCASIA point downwards. Now, Xanthosomas also have leaves that point downwards. The difference between a Xanthosoma and a COLOCASIA is the shape of its leaves. So COLOCASIAs tend to have much more rounder shaped leaves, whereas the leaves of Xanthosomas, they look more like shields or arrowheads. So this is a good example of a Xanthosoma leaf, because this leaf is not really a round shape per se. It looks more like an arrow or a shield, and that's definitely, you can see from the pointed bit of the leaf. Now, with Xanthosoma leaves in particular, they're well known for their leaves. In fact, its colloquial name, the Mickey Mouse plant, is actually because the shape of its leaf looks like Mickey Mouse and his ears. Another interesting fact about the leaves here for this Xanthosoma is they tend to form a little cup or a pocket down below on the pointed part of the leaf, which tends to act like a cup and holds water, which is a cute characteristic of this plant. So Xanthosomas, as we mentioned before, are typically grown for their foliage. You can definitely see that their leaves give off this quilted look. It has a lot of texture in it. The variegation is also very beautiful. And it's got these lovely veins which run through it. So definitely I can see why people would grow this for its decorative qualities. A little bit about their variegation, and this is actually a good example here. This is its newest leaf, and you can see that the variegation here is more of a yellowy cream color. Well, as this plant matures, its leaf, the variegation on the leaf, will turn more white. Actually, this would be a better example. Becomes more white. So this is one of its older leaves. So the variegation, if you do have this plant and you start to see some yellowy creamy variegation, don't worry, it actually turns out white when it gets older. An interesting fact about the Xanthosoma, the word Xanthosoma is derived from two Greek words, xanthos, which means yellow, and soma, which means body, and you can definitely see how that name stands true for the more juvenile leaves. You definitely see that yellow coming out from the body. In terms of their size for this plant, when it becomes a fully mature specimen, it can get up to about 90 centimeters to a meter tall, and the leaf span I read, it can get up to 40 centimeters long. So this one is not yet 40 centimeters, but that's how big the leaf can be. Another thing about this plant is that it does go dormant during winter, so don't worry if your plant starts to die back in the cooler months. It does go dormant over winter. If you're keeping this as a house plant, bring it indoors over winter and water the bulb sparingly. So I would suggest water the bulb maybe once every 6 weeks, because you don't want that bulb to dry out completely, because in spring it will grow back again. So in terms of care tips for this plant, given that this is a member of the AROID family, we know here, I feel like I talk a lot about AROIDs on this channel, but I suppose that's the plant I like to own. Given that it's an AROID plant, what that means, it lives in the tropics, and so in terms of light, it likes to get a lot of bright indirect light. I keep this guy outside and he gets morning light and afternoon light, and he seems to do that like that quite well. In terms of watering, I find that this plant gets very thirsty. It is quite a heavy feeder, so unlike most of my other plants, I water this guy once every 2 days, and I do a full deep water. Which means I water until all the water comes out from the bottom of the pot, which is pretty much how you should be watering your plants. Always do deep watering. So he particularly gets quite thirsty during summer, and also when he gets new pups like this. So definitely when you see him have new growth, it's another sign you should up the watering. In terms of how quickly a pup leaf grows, for my plant it takes about 1 week for when you start noticing a new leaf becoming split from the stem to becoming a juvenile leaf. He is a heavy feeder, so what that means is I will fertilize this guy once every week with a synthetic fertilizer. I am slowly getting into fertilizers at the moment, so the fertilizers I typically own are bought from a nursery store, so I think any over-the-counter all-purpose fertilizer should work relatively well. But this guy is a hungry plant, and if you don't water him, I do find that he's not going to grow as much, and he gets dried out quite quickly. Now, when doing my research on care for this plant, a lot of information sources out there say that this plant likes quite rich organic soil, and I can understand why, being native to the tropical areas. But one thing I notice is the soil that I've got him in is actually quite well draining, so it's a very heavy mix of soil with perlite, and so this soil actually dries out a lot, which I actually find this plant likes. I haven't dared to transfer him into more organic or rich soil because he seems to be doing quite well. So I guess, guys, the information you see out there for Xanthosomas would say that these guys like quite rich organic soil, although I do have mine in quite aerated soil, and it's actually I think I've got 50% perlite in the soil, so it's actually very well draining. In terms of temperature for this guy, I've had this guy since springtime in Sydney, so November. So he's been doing quite well because it is quite warm, and so he's definitely, I'd said his leaf sizes have definitely doubled in size since I've got him. And I think a big factor of that is recognizing that this plant is actually a very heavy feeder. So he likes lots of water, lots of good nutrients. So I think if you make sure you feed him well, he's going to give you this amazing foliage. In terms of pests for this plant, I've heard that spider mites and mealybugs are the most common type of plants, and they will more often prey on unhealthy little plants. So I think I've been fortunate to have this guy who's been quite strong, and so he's been relatively pest free for the time that I've got him. One thing I also wanted to share with everyone is these rippling parts of your leaf. Now, these rippling parts of the leaf, I think, is actually because this leaf was growing and forming. I don't think I actually gave enough water, and so when he grew up, he's got these wrinkles on him. So I think, as a tip, guys, if you want to make sure your leaf does turn out nice and smooth, like this one here, when you do recognize a pup's coming along the way, make sure you do give him enough water, otherwise you're going to get these wrinkles. The other thing I wanted to share with everyone is actually this is an old leaf, and so I just wanted to show everyone what an old leaf looks like. It does start to brown and yellow from the edges, and you can almost see green being retracted back into its veins. So this is an example of what an old leaf looks like. In case anyone was worried that their Xanthosoma was dying or have any diseases, I thought I'd keep this one on there so people can see. Mealybugs and spider mites, hopefully everybody knows what they look like or can recognize when there's when your plant has them. Mealybugs of course look like very white little fuzz, and spider mites you can definitely tell because they look like they've got spider webs on the plant. In terms of how long these leaves last, I found that these leaves generally last anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. For this plant, for me, that's how long a mature leaf has lasted for. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video of our care tips for looking after your Alocasia xanthosoma. This guy actually is one of my more favorite types of plants, and I guess look at him, he's so pretty, he's so beautiful. It's hard not to like him, and I do really like his colloquial name, the Mickey Mouse plant. If you do have any questions, feel free to let me know, and I'll make sure to respond to them. But thanks for watching everyone, bye!